Okay, this is why young people today should stay at home rather than rush to move out. We have this today. If you're a young adult and you choose to stay at home, you're looked down upon. You're told, oh, you need to move away from your parents, and it's all rubbish, absolute rubbish. Why? Why do we need to do this? Unless you're planning on having lots of children and you can't fit them in the house, that's really the only reason. If you're planning on having 2 children or less, you do not need to move out. Okay? When you have a family to begin with made up of 5 people, alright? And then if you have another family, then they get married, then you still have the same number of people you had to begin with. You have the same number of houses, same number of people. If you choose to have 2 children, you're still going to end up with the same number of houses and same number of people. The kids do not need to move out to have their own house. Nothing's changed. If you're having, and in the UK you are having less than 2 children. So you don't need to do that. There's no reason. It's just stupid people going around creating this, this kind of idea that to be a man you have to, but it's just stupid. They're not thinking about things clearly. Oh, it's so frustrating. Alright, I want to make this really clear. Alright, you're living in family. Say, oh, but if you meet with someone, you've got to move out, because then, where are you going to live? Where are the children going to be brought up? Well, you can either have the original house, so if one person moves out from one house, another person moves out from another house, the houses could downsize, and then with the leftover money, you could then erect a house for the 2 people who have moved out. You still got the same number of people. Unless you're having more than 2 children, which the trend is not in the UK, you're still going to end up with the same number of people living in the same square foot or square meter accommodation. Why rush to move out? Why? Obsessed with oh, kids, chop them out when they turn 18. Yeah, that was a really great decision. Did you ever think about that? Clearly you didn't. You just, went along with the flow. Just ridiculous. All it takes is just people to downsize and reorganize themselves. Still going to end up with the same number of people requiring the same number of rooms. But instead now, people go out, take on ridiculous mortgages, take 20 years to pay off. For what? For what reason? Alright, maybe if you want a bigger house, you want more space, you want a bigger room to live in, but alright, that's fair enough. But we're in the UK with negative real interest rates, which means that when you go to supermarkets to buy things or buy stuff, it's costing more year on year. Why would you choose, when people can barely afford to pay their bills and pay for food, why would they choose then to put a luxury of having a bigger house on top of everything? It's hard enough for everyday people, just to pay for everyday things. And yet they're still told, oh, move out. 18, kick them out. Ridiculous. The only people who want you to say that are the people who own land, too much land that they don't need. And so they're like, hey, if I build a house, and not too many houses, by the way, because that would lower the house prices for everyone, which would be, I wouldn't want to do that. But if I just release enough land just to build one house on, and then get these stupid kids, to move out and spend the next 20 years paying me interest for that house that they never needed in the first place. Yeah, that's great. Can you not see those people who have excess land? Who are the wealthy people in society? The landowners. Maybe they get bored of horse riding or shooting things in their mansions, and they lose an acre from their 100,000 acres that they own. To build a house. Just one house. It doesn't lower the price of houses. And then they come along and they tell families, no, chuck your kids out. Why? Because when the kid moves out and takes a loan from the bank, it benefits them. It benefits the people. It benefits the landowner. It benefits the bank. It benefits the employers. You know, if you thought about it, maybe you don't want to work 20 years in a job you don't like. And you don't have to. If you just come to your own conclusion. You know, think about things for yourself. You know, they are telling you what they want you to do. Obviously, because they're unscrupulous and it benefits them. This is the problem we have in this world. People do not think for themselves and they're going along. You know, just think, if people didn't rush out into the house and then getting themselves into debt, then feel obliged to work for somebody else, maybe there wouldn't be stupid jobs like nuclear power plants and Monsanto GM foods, having to work for those kinds of people because you're forced to. You know, if you just stayed at home like a Mark Zuckerberg and play around in your bedroom, maybe you can develop the next Facebook. You know, instead of just being just going out there and just getting the first meaningless job because you're so much in debt now with your mortgage, you know, and you feel like and you come to a realization maybe it wasn't the best thing to do, but you're 10 years into a 20 years mortgage and you're stuck. You know, ridiculous. You know, just stay at home when, you know, two families, if they're wanting, you know, the kid from that family wants to marry the kid from that family, the boy and the girl, well then the parents can downsize, and with the money that they save on each side of the family, they have their house, they can pay for the kid's house. And then the kid can do what they want instead of working a meaningless job for 20 years of their lives. Wasted. Or in an industry that's completely messing up with the environment. Because this is the thing. If you have this idea, you can always build another house, always another house. This is what causes population growth. It causes resource waste. It causes destruction of the environment. Because things aren't... But it doesn't have to be like that. There's no reason to do that. And people say, oh, but you're living longer. You know, and so if you're living longer, then obviously there's going to be more generations living at the same time. Well, all that means is that you have kids later, which is what people are doing. You know, don't have kids when you're 19. Have kids when you're 29 now. You know, you're living longer. Or have kids when you're 39, maybe in a few years. You know, because you're living longer. You know, if you get a 19-year-old who has kids, and then they have kids when they're 19, and they have kids when they're 19, you're going to have 3 generations between 60 years. But if you know you're going to live longer, if you're having kids when you're 30, and then your kids have kids when they're 30, then you have 3 generations over 60 years. Sorry, I said that wrong, but if you had 20, if you're having kids at 20, you get 3 generations over 40 years. If you have kids when you're 30, you're getting 3 generations over 60 years. So that idea that people living longer, so you have to move out, is rubbish. Rubbish. You know, just have kids. You don't even have to tell people that. They already are having kids later. It's already happening. So for all the people who talk, you know, you're not being a man if you don't move out, or you're just being, you know, no. We're actually thinking about what's best. You know, now that I'm not moving out, I'm actually getting on with a worthwhile job. Because I'm not in debt to somebody else. I don't have to pay. I can just go out and pay for the things that I need. Which means, you know, you can work a 2-day week. And then you've got the rest of it to yourselves. You know, to do what you want to do. You know, not what that landowner or the bank or the employer wants you to do to get you into their industry. And to have you a debt slave. They don't care. You know, as parents, you should not be telling your kids to they're forcing them to move out. It's ridiculous. Do a little bit of effort yourselves, you know, juggle. Like I say, you're still going to have the same number of people living in the same rooms, the same house size, the same number of bedrooms. You know? So if you just thought about ways, you know, this is what it comes down to, a little effort. A little thinking, a little consciousness, a little adapting. Not just relying on what somebody else tells you. You know, thinking for yourselves. It's really liberating. You know? So no, if you're not having more than 2 kids, and if you're living in an environment that isn't really a growth environment anyway, things are more expensive day to day, don't move out. Just adapt. Adapt the living spaces for everyone. That's all we have to do. And stop giving people who choose to stay at home a hard time. They're not funding the banks that are putting the whole world in a crisis. You know, a financial crisis has been going on since 2008 that cost bailouts, that takes money from people's savings. These are not people who have to work in stupid industries because they're not in debt to these bankers or to these landowners who just happen to have the land and want money from it. Tough luck. Maybe they have to learn that their land is a waste. People don't want to have to feel, by their propaganda, basically. You have to move out. So you have to buy their land. So you have to give them your money. So you have to work in their industries. Do you see? If you start down that road of not thinking and letting somebody else decide, then it never stops. And I understand it's painful for people to wake up who have spent their whole lives living like this, to hear somebody who's younger than them say it probably wasn't the best solution. I know it's painful. But hey, it's still better. Better late than never. So just stop supporting the lie that kids have to move out. They don't. Adults have to start adjusting the way they run the house. That's all. Just think again. Same number of people. Unless you're having more than 2 children, nothing changes. You do not need another house when you can't afford it.